if you have to go to a special event to turn your phone off and talk to someone, then you are just catfishing the other person. You are 100% addicted to that phone and it will not last. Is that catfishing? Because I don't think that it is. Welcome to Something More Human. I'm Sam.
And I'm Elliot. We're a married couple exploring human connection and its impact on ours, our guests, and our listeners' lives.
Join us in creating something more human.
Welcome back, folks. This episode is sponsored by New Mexico Tico.
Yay!
Thank you so much. We've got some cool, exciting things coming up with them that we'll share with you today. But shout out New Mexico Tico. Thank you so much for sponsoring this episode.
So we hosted our first phone-free experience, which I feel like I'm still kind of processing how well it went. I'm still coming to terms with the fact that it went really well. Nothing major went wrong. And that is reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's also cool is that we could potentially be lying because we have so far we haven't shown anybody really any footage because first of all, no one had their phones. We did have a videographer. Shout out to Jake Lawrence. Thank you so much for recording the event, but we haven't posted anything about it, which we will soon. But
I kind of like it.
We could be making it all up. I
kind of like it though. It's like that there's air of mystery. Like you had to be there to see it.
Yeah.
You had to be there to experience it.
You did sort of.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's part of the beauty of something like this, which is the ephemerality of the way that life used to be. And you've said before, what would my brain do if I forced it to be present and to remember and didn't have my phone as a crutch to remember for me?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Which is very interesting.
Yeah.
So we thought we would kick off this episode not just talking about how the event went, but I was a little bit surprised at the response. I know that you, Elliot, weren't, but we did get some press coverage, which was really cool. So KOB4, which is the local news channel in Albuquerque, did a quick segment. And when they posted about it on their Facebook page, I don't know, I was expecting it to perform as well as any other post on their page, which is 100 likes, a handful of comments, people see it, but it's not really that big of a deal. This post has 128 comments, 63 shares, and over 1,000 reactions.
It definitely blew up, which is pretty cool. But we love the comment section.
Yeah, so we kind of wanted to read you some of these comments because I was shocked actually at how divisive this concept was, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in depth. But just to kind of read some of these things, this person says, "Is it okay to bring my iPad?"
What the heck? That's one I was just looking at. That's hilarious.
This person said, "I'm looking at this article on my phone. I will drive there with the directions on my phone. And when I'm there, I will take selfies on my phone."
We did respond just a couple times. Corny or not, doesn't really matter. But this one made me so sad and I was going to respond to it, but I didn't know how because I was, I think, feeling the energy of preparing for the event. And I thought if I respond to this, it's going to bring me down. But this one was very sad to me, but I have to read it anyway. It said, "What would you talk about? 99% of my conversations start with, 'Oh my God, look at this,' as I showed them my phone with the thing I want to share it on. Bruh."
I read that.
Bruh, what? That's
I read that
depressing.
As a sarcastic cut.
Maybe.
I think you're reading it as more sincere.
Too literal? Oh.
Yeah.
I see.
Because so many of these are, this person said, "How would I know about this if it hadn't popped up on my phone?" Imagine going to this event and being the only person on your phone. It's so funny. This one. "An emergency breaks out. I need a phone. Who has a phone? I don't. Oh, I don't either. Nope, no phone here. Oh gosh." So y'all, just this idea. When we say it's a phone-free experience, we're not saying we are putting everyone in imminent danger. Should something happen, there's no possible way that we would be able to reach
civilization.
Right. Okay. Again, we put up flyers. We did some kind of bootstrap marketing, physical materials. They had QR codes on them. We see the irony. We also fully recognize that we live in the 21st century and you need a QR code to access a menu at a restaurant. If you scan the QR code on our thing, you'll get to the website faster. You might not forget about it. That is just simply the reality that we live in. So we can do both. We're not saying, let's go back to living in caves.
Yes, this is true. There were some other good ones. There were some misogynistic ones, which is so strange because what does that have to do with a phone-free event? But
yeah, hot take.
There was one that said still won't work because it doesn't change women's attitude and behavior.
What does that mean?
It got 18 responses.
I think one of the top responses is who hurt you?
Oh wow, the first one was another man, of course. Preach. They can't deal with the fact that we're done with them and they can't handle themselves. What does that even mean? We're done with them? Men are done with women?
And we need our phones to...
The world would cease to exist if men were done with women.
I don't know.
Well, I guess we could do just in vitro forever and ever, right?
I just have no idea what that means.
I don't either.
This one's really funny. If you have to go to a special event to turn your phone off and talk to someone, then you are just catfishing the other person. You are 100% addicted to that phone and it will not last. Is that catfishing? Because I don't think that it is.
Oh yeah, there's
Should we say our favorite? Should we say our favorite one, or should I save that for last?
Yeah, go for it.
Our favorite one is, this sounds like the plot of an A24 horror movie. LOL.
Now I want to hopefully get A24's attention and tell them that this could be a potentially really good premise, like a retreat, like a no phone retreat. There's like no cell service. There's no technology anywhere in the near vicinity. It's going to take you like a day or 2 days to get to the nearest. And that's just a risk you're willing to take. And then, something inevitably goes awry. So maybe we should pitch this to A24. It could be a good idea.
I can't, because I wouldn't watch that movie because I don't like, I'm imagining some kind of like post-apocalyptic
How could it go well?
Horror. I don't know. Everybody leaves feeling refreshed and rejuvenated at the end and realize that it was all just anxiety that they needed to work through. It was all in their head. That could be a cool movie plot.
But what would be like the conflict in the movie? Like what would be the inciting action?
Your internal anxiety. Like maybe you start to hallucinate, but like you figure out that it's just unresolved anxiety and you deal with it and you become your best self when you leave. That could be cute.
I do like that.
I love a wholesome happy ending. I'll just read a couple more and then we can move on. This one says, he attached a picture. Before you judge someone for staring at their phone like a zombie, please consider the high probability that they're taking a photo of a roadrunner or a balloon. And he attached a photo of a deer.
Yeah. Oh, so I did.
That one's kind of cute.
That is cute.
This one is one of my favorite comments because I was like, thank you for standing up for us. A lot of negativity here, LMAO. If you don't like it, don't go.
Amen, sister. Someone said, having an event with this as a premise is a pretty good idea. Charging almost $50 per couple, not so much. And you actually chimed in and said, and drinks and snacks and a comedy show are all included in your ticket price. No hidden fees or added taxes. Mm-hmm. And then someone else said it's $49 for 2 tickets, which I think that's what he meant. But anyway, I think we did a good job. We did a good job.
I'm really proud of us. Last comment I'll read because I appreciate this one. Older people. Young people shouldn't be on their phones so much. Young people. I'm going to an event. Well, no one will be on their phones. Old people. No, not like that.
That's one thing that I'd like to talk about is the amount of people that we didn't know was kind of surprising and honestly a really good thing. That means our marketing works to a degree. A lot of the people were over the age of, I would say 40, or not a lot. I would say a decent percentage of the people that showed up were over the age of 40, which I was actually very surprised by.
Yeah, I would say that I was expecting people that are sort of our age, like mid-20s to mid-30s, that sort of like 10-year age range.
Yeah.
We did have that, but we did also have at least a quarter of people 40 plus, and I thought that was really, really awesome.
That is awesome. It's a good spread.
But it was interesting to me that this comment section was so incredibly divisive because I see this idea as sort of harmless. Like especially as a young person who is a creator, I'm on my phone a lot. Like I am on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm also on there as a consumer for my own pleasure. Mm-hmm. I'm texting people. I'm calling people. I'm FaceTiming people. I'm scheduling meetings. I'm looking at my calendar. Like I am spending a good chunk of time on my phone day to day. Mm-hmm. So the idea of meeting people in a physical space where we have a common agreement to not be on our phones sounds awesome. And if it's not possible that I'm willing to part with my phone for 3 hours, then it's not for me and I just won't go.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to me that there were so many people that were sort of upset about this idea.
Well, I just think it struck a chord, which I think means that we're onto something unique. And it's not even inherently that unique, but I just think that means that people have a very strong opinion about phone usage one way or the other, which means it's a hot topic, which I think is a good thing. And it means that there's a lot to talk about, which we'll be doing.
We were recently guests on another podcast, and the host asked us, how does social media play a role in connection?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it can be very easy to see the world in black and white, or to see our lives and choices as right and wrong. But I feel like as I, for myself, release the idea of right and wrong and think about it more as like short path, long path, and like there's actually not a wrong way to live your own life. There's sort of windier paths, some that might be more treacherous. There are some that maybe are quicker, easier, happier, whatever, but they're not like wrong, right? Because you're always learning, you're always growing, and we're always making mistakes because we're humans. And so thinking about our phones and thinking about social media, I think they're such great tools to stay connected and to share what we're up to and to, bring new people into our world, but they may not be the best tool for finding kind of those like soul level connections. And that might be more what we're talking about here, which I think that's kind of the magic of in person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now that I'm thinking, it doesn't seem like 3 hours was long enough.
No, it wasn't.
Or the way that it was structured. We had really good feedback, and truly like almost nothing went wrong. I wouldn't say really anything went wrong, but I think some of the feedback we got was that they wished that there would have been more time to, mingle.
Mm-hmm.
And we were so worried about the programmatic aspect of it. We didn't want people to feel like they didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's a good point that you're making. And we could have given people more time to, get to know one another.
Yeah, totally. I think a learning for us that we'll be implementing for our next event is we maybe overprogrammed this first event.
Mm-hmm.
And so creating more, not just opportunities for people to mingle, but how do we curate in a very intentional way opportunities and excuses for people to engage that are kind of taking you through levels. Like there's the get to know you, there's the maybe ask a question that sparks deeper thought, and then there's kind of this more deep, reflective, sharing, personal.
Right.
And people can kind of choose your own adventure on how you want to share, who you want to share with, how deep you want to go.
Right.
But how do we, as like Sam and Elliot, as the hosts that are working to curate this experience, do that in an intentional way, deliver it?
I definitely tend to overthink, and I was trying to imagine all of these scenarios or all of these ways to get people to connect when I think it can be very simple. For instance, this morning we went to the networking event, and she had everyone, that was there. She went in a circle and had, you basically introduced yourself, and I felt like I was in college again.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the end, she said, and an icebreaker, what is, tell us one food that you could not live without. Use whatever word. For the first word that comes to mind is corny, but whatever word you want to use, like that one thing, that small thing at the end that she added, I feel like just that broke the ice.
Yeah.
Just even mentioning that broke the ice. And it was just like, there was less pressure to talk about why you're there and your business and who you're looking for and who your ideal client is. That there was like a personal touch at the end, which I feel like absolutely definitely helped everyone mingle and finding something else to talk about that wasn't just
business or a pitch. Yeah, I felt like that kept me grounded in interest, because I do think that sometimes when you're listening to like pitch after pitch after pitch, like, hi, I'm so-and-so, I do this for this kind of client, I'm looking for this type of person, hi, I'm this person, I do this, I do, like, it sort of becomes like white noise in the background.
True.
So it kept me engaged and grounded in the personality of the person,
Yeah, I agree. And that's a small thing. It's so simple. And we did all kinds of things. We had all kinds of ideas trying to get people to, to come out of their shells if they were in one. And I don't think a lot of them were even necessary, just based off of the space that we curated.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I feel like the next event here in Denver can be so much more simple and still impactful. I know we're both worried about, especially me, I'm worried about like, was it cool? Like, did they have the most amazing time ever? And was it the super novel, unique idea? It doesn't need to be those things necessarily. You know what I mean? We just need to curate a space where people are comfortable and happy to meet each new people and to talk about cool things and cool ideas, you know?
And I think that it is as simple as the authentic structure, like this icebreaker question, like what food can't you live without? Mexican food, Thai food, pizza, whatever. Like it doesn't have to be bend over backwards extravagant, extraordinary, never before seen, show stopping, whatever that TikTok sound is. But it can be, I think we are looking for that excuse to talk, like, oh, they said we should talk about this, so I'm going to ask you, you know, to kind of break the awkwardness.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I'm continually thinking about. I also felt like the power of having 100 people, there were 100 people there, not including vendors, not including partners, collaborators.
Pretty crazy, man.
We all had a shared commitment to just be present for 3 hours. And like, if I wanted your phone number, I would have to write it down or like find you after, you know? And I think that the idea of positive social pressure continues to pop up for me as I think about all areas of my life. Like exercise, we've talked about the run club, not being on your phone. Okay, we've talked about the event series. Like, what about inspiring relaxation? I've been talking with Kay and Mel about doing like a mini book club because we're all down the same like romance fantasy rabbit hole at the same time. And that is totally devoid of productivity. That doesn't have anything to do with growing our business. That doesn't have anything to do with personal development or making me a stronger habit stacker or a more productive, you know, time blocker. But it does create this space for me to connect with my friends.
Right.
And to really, I don't know, just like enjoy myself and relax and to take that piece of life as seriously as these other productive kind of like under the umbrella of capitalism areas of life that we focus more on usually. How did you feel about having 100 people in the room that have committed to being off their phones and like sort of support this idea that we had?
You know, the most impressive, the most proud I was of us was like the least impactful moment of the night, which was literally checking people in. We had 100.
I don't think that is not impactful. I think that's what set the stage.
Yeah, well, it just, I mean, you know, the first 45 minutes we couldn't really experience because we were checking in. And obviously we like to get to a place where we could be in the room for the first 45 minutes, but we went through 100 people in like 45 minutes. And like no one got to see that, but none of that even matters anyway. I think that was like one of my favorite parts because it went so well. It went better than it could have gone for having, you know, a computer to check in, one computer to check in. Like, what if something went wrong? What if like you lost Wi-Fi? Like, what if, I don't know, like what if the system went down? What if, you know what I mean?
I wouldn't have let that happen. I had an Excel sheet.
You printed?
I had a spreadsheet that I could access without Wi-Fi, but.
Okay, well.
I did think about that.
That's good. I didn't think about that at all. And if you would have been me, you might have not. And then something would have gone wrong and I would have been like, well, the show is canceled.
I'm the one that created the check-in spreadsheet so that we could capture everyone. So.
And it's a good thing that you did. Because if that were up to me, I wouldn't have, like I said. No. And then if we didn't have Wi-Fi or something happened to my computer, we would be toast.
Well, I think what was so special about that is because there were so many people there that we didn't know or that didn't know us and didn't know about the podcast, it gave us an opportunity to see someone's face, to introduce ourselves, to hear their name.
Yeah.
And I might have mentioned this in a previous episode that I've been kind of struggling with this idea that I'm forgettable because I often experience people who I've met who see me again and have no fucking idea who I am, which is fine. And I have always, not always, but I have been taking it sort of personally, but have realized in the last like 6-ish months that actually I have a gift for remembering people's names and faces. And I'm holding people to this like very high standard because I'm better than average at it. And I think now I'm starting to realize how this fits into the podcast, right? Because we checked in 100 people and then an hour later, people were kind of standing because they didn't want to interrupt and find a seat. So I went over to them, called them by name, and I said, there are 2 seats next to each other over here if you want to follow me. And they were so grateful and appreciative, and they called me by name.
Mm-hmm.
And that small moment felt like a big deal.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. As you're talking about that, I'm thinking of the real answer, which is for me, the question you asked me, the real answer, not the checking in part, but the part that I'm most like proud of or was most impacted by, maybe the most proud of, was the company that we kept, the vendors that we collaborated with, the team that we assembled couldn't have been better. You know what I mean? I think that was really, really important for the success of the event. And so hopefully we get to shout out each individual on this episode just because I want to, because we can. That's my favorite part. Just the team that was assembled, everybody that it took to create a successful 3-hour event. Really, really happy about that.
I think this draws me back to something we talked about in the previous episode around what's possible when you tap into and show up as your most authentic self. And I feel like what made these collaborations so successful was that we were aligned in the same mission.
Right.
And they were really happy to support us and help us and join us in bringing this idea to life. And yeah, that feels like kind of an intangible piece that is difficult when you're creating a business, right? Because there are some things that are bigger, that are cheaper, that are faster, that are more profitable, but those are not always the most mission aligned. And I think that is sometimes where friction is, because it's hard to say no when there's money on the table, or it's hard to say no when there's like a faster option. But we really took our time to be intentional. And I think that it was really, really successful. You know, it wasn't about me, Sam, you, Elliot. It was sort of about how do we bring a community together that wants to support and celebrate each other. And like, it's not really about us, which was interesting feedback actually that we got, which was we would have loved to learn more about you guys. Like, who are the hosts? Why did you do this?
Yeah, so that's interesting because I feel like, would I really care? And I guess the answer is yes. If I'm thinking about like the Aspire tour, like there's a degree of, well, I'm investing my money into this event. So like, who's putting it on? Like, who are these people? You know? And I think it's okay for some of the things to be revolved around you for the sake of like trust from the audience. You know what I mean? Because I think you and I are so concerned with, oh, like, you know, it's not about us and we want to be as humble as possible, which is fine. And those are real emotions. We're not faking that. I think we really feel like that. But at the same time, I can see where they're coming from. And I'm wondering like what is it that we could have said?
I think that it's more of our story. Like, how did this idea come about?
Right.
What is Something More Human? The podcast was born and then the event series was born. Sort of a little bit more context building around who are we and why are we doing this?
Yeah.
So maybe we can go into why did we do this? Why are we launching this event series? Why did we host this? Like, how did some of these come up?
Right.
Before you answer that question, let's take a little break, talk about the sponsor of this episode. And we would love it if you all use this break to whatever platform you're listening to follow the show. We're learning more and more about kind of best ways to support us, and just pressing that follow button or the subscribe button really does help. We talked last week about how we are collaborating with New Mexico Tea Company on a custom Something More Human blend, and we dived deep into how we're doing it. So this week I thought it might be nice to tell you, like, what is New Mexico Tea Company? And many of you listeners are not in New Mexico. So they ship worldwide, they ship internationally. They have over 400 blends of teas. And if you're local, you can find them on, where is it? Mountain and 6th.
Incredible store. They have tea on 3 walls that are like 10 feet high that you have to. I'm 5'4", so I definitely can't reach all of them. I had to have somebody
assist you.
Get some teas for me. It is what it is, you know? Beautiful, beautiful space. Yeah, over 400 teas that you can try, smell in person. Amazing staff. Sean cannot recommend enough. She probably knows more than anyone I've ever met about tea, and is clearly very passionate, and has curated a few blends for us to try to nail down the tea of the summer for us.
Yeah, and we hear you all. You speak, we listen. y'all didn't love the mouth sounds of us trying the teas, so we're not going to do that this time. But this is just sort of taking you along the process. We're one step closer to solidifying our blend. And then hopefully next time we chat, we can tell you a little bit about the blend and a little bit about a tea release party that we're going to do in Albuquerque in early June.
Mm-hmm. Super excited about that.
Okay, let's get back to hearing you answer my delightful question.
What is the question? Why did we do it?
Yeah, what brought this idea on? Why did we even do this? Why are we doing this?
That's a hard question to answer, actually.
Well,
I feel like there are so many, and I'm like, it seems like you're asking me for a specific answer.
No, I'm asking you because I don't know how clear we've made this on the show before, kind of the division of our brains, but I fall very kind of naturally into an integrator role, like COO. So I'm very like systems oriented. I'm making the Excel sheets. I'm tracking the data. I'm building the impact report. I'm looking at numbers and email templates and marketing plans and project runways and like that kind of operational brain.
Mm-hmm.
And Elliot falls very naturally into this visionary role, which is like CEO. Merch falls under Elliot's umbrella. Design, like crazy new ideas that are really out of the box. Business ideas, long-term planning, like this kind of forecasting forward in an innovative way. So that's why I'm asking you, because this is sort of a brainchild of yours.
Yeah, I mean, my memory is not good, unfortunately, because I'm thinking I know the words. Well, it's funny. You're the one that chose the return to real life words had been mine on my computer for a really long time. What did it really mean at the time when I created it? I don't remember, but you're actually the one that said we should actually call it Return to Real Life. Do you remember that?
Not really.
Really? You're the one. You knew the words existed, but you said that, I think that this should be called Return to Real Life. And I was like, yeah, that's sick. Like, I really like that idea. But I don't even know if I remember where this idea spawned from or why we decided we would do a phone-free event. I don't even know if I remember the big bang of the idea. It seems like maybe neither of us do. Do you?
I feel like you do. You've said it before.
See, my brain's this is just my brain. So you'll have to excuse the mess.
I do think for the last year, you've been talking about how addicted you are to your phone.
Yeah.
And for the last 5 years, maybe once a quarter or twice a year, you come to me and say,
I need to get rid of my phone.
I need to get rid of my phone. I need your help. I need to buy a flip phone. Like, this is ruining my life. I need help. And then eventually you overcome it and can set some boundaries and you're like, look at my screen time. Look how great I've been doing. And then fall back into I've been spending 9 hours a day on my phone. I need some help being more grounded. So that I feel was you're always talking about the nucleus of the idea. And it's really your own personal struggle.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm so concerned with when was the moment that you and I were like, the event series will be called Return to Real Life and it'll be about phone usage and it'll be a phone-free experience. And this is why we're doing it. I don't know why I feel like I need to know that moment or else I don't know or it matters less, which is obviously not the case. But yeah, I feel like this is something that we could talk about over and over and over on the podcast. And hopefully we will talk more about. And maybe I can be a little more open about it. And it's a direction that we can go, which I think is such a potent thing that I can't even accurately describe to you. You and I have not been doing super hot in the last few weeks, which is a combination of things probably, but I think one of them I notice when I'm on my phone more, obviously, the worse I feel about myself and the more distracted I am and the less I get done. Of course, there's so much power in sharing that information, especially during a phone-free event. I feel like there needs to be this almost, it just feels taboo. For some reason, it feels like a taboo topic. I think because it's not, I don't even know if I can say these words for YouTube. I think because it's not a DRUG or it's something that you're putting into your body that's violent necessarily, an illicit chemical.
You mean destructive?
Yeah. Because it's a phone and because you're just ingesting visual and audio information, it's it's not that big of a deal. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But in fact, it's just as bad. I'm not trying to get really, really heavy, but I realize that I do realize that I have an addiction. And sometimes I think I'm not trying to compare myself to a heroin addict, but I realize this is what it must feel like in terms of the frequency with which I am drawn to this specific thing, which is not doing what I need to be doing and just look at my phone for a few seconds. Mm-hmm. I feel that every single day, all the time, every day, all day. And I'm like, how do I overcome it? Will I overcome it? What can I do? And I feel like it's something that needs to be talked about more. And maybe we can talk about that more, during these events. Maybe some of the events will be like a live Q&A, with us, or even with the people that are there, just thinking of ideas while we're talking about it. But a long-winded way of answering your question, why? And I guess that maybe you were just on board.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when I consider the ways that I want to rest and restore, that usually includes some kind of vacation or trip where either we're outside of cell service or it's so serene that just like having my phone with me is like the antithesis of the vibes. So I leave it at home. And so why can't that come into the ways that we cultivate community and relationships,
For sure.
I think that although I am not addicted to my phone, I do notice, we talked about this in the episode where we had a picnic, I do notice that when I intentionally take my phone out of my sight, I'm able to be more present. I'm not, I have a watch. I don't need to look at my phone to check the time, where I'm inevitably distracted by an email that I got or something catches my eye and now I've shifted my attention from the person I'm talking to my phone. And I've been on the other end where I'm talking to someone and they pull out their phone to just answer a quick thing or check the time and then respond to a quick DM or whatever. Yeah. And that awkwardness where you're like, should I stop? Should I wait for your attention? Should I keep going? Can you split it? Can you multitask? Like, it's a bit awkward and it's a bit rude,
Yeah, we could get into this quite a bit, but I agree with what you're saying. I definitely worry too much about people think this is very specific, and I wonder if she'll hear it, but I have this very specific, vivid memory of Marissa Romero. We had just got done with the Arty Party. Remember that? Probably 2017. And we were at the brewery. Were you there? Did you come with us? It doesn't matter. We're at the brewery.
I think not.
We're at the brewery. And, we're coming down from the magical mushrooms. And I'm like looking up and we're all on our phones.
No, I think I went home to go to sleep.
Maybe you did. Yeah. We're all on our phones. And I remember asking Marissa something like, should we feel bad? Like, should we feel bad like that this is what we're doing with our time? Like that we're all like buried in our phones. And Marissa said something like, no, like this is just how it is. Like, it's 2017. Like everyone has a phone. Like we're all on our phones and we're still hanging out having a good time. And I was like, okay. And that sticks out to me like so often. It's very strange because it's such a faraway memory and it's so small and it's seemingly inconsequential. And I'm trying to say like, I'm not trying to vilify the phone, but I think for me, I need to vilify it. I think for me, it needs to feel like an enemy. And I know that probably sounds really dramatic to most people, but I don't know. I just think about like, what could you and I do if like we didn't have our phones? Like imagine how much better our relationship would be. Truly, like you and I, like we spend a lot of time on our phones. Like I really do think that. You have a very specific schedule. I'm not calling you out, but I'm on my phone sporadically throughout the day, all day into the wee hours of the night. And you are very, very amazing and have the same routine and go to bed at the same time every single night. And in the morning, wake up and take the dog for a walk and make coffee and have your alone time. Then you get to work. And then by 3:00, generally around there, 3 or 4, you're done with work. And then you spend a couple hours on your phone on the couch because you deserve that, because that's your time to chill, which is totally understandable. Or you're reading a book right now. But I'm like, what could we do? Like, what could society, imagine all of the energy that has been spent, like just staring at a phone. And of course, like, are you learning some things? Are you being inspired? Of course, absolutely. Like, is it therapy in a way, depending on what you're looking at? 100%, for sure. But a lot of the time, it's spent like sort of wasting away.
Sure.
And like, what could we be doing with that time as a couple, as individuals? I think about that a lot. And it's like, I wish that we could just get rid of our phones for like 2 weeks. We're forced to. But that's another thing. Like, does that reality doesn't exist for most people. Like we can't do that. Like we could do that, but for the podcast, like a lot of our marketing is on the internet, most of it, almost all of it. So like, how do we just disappear for 2 weeks without phones? I feel like that's an episode that's coming, or that's like a challenge or something that we could do with the community that we have, that we're building, We talked about that in the very beginning about doing challenges, like, like a 24-hour challenge for somebody, you know, and following along on their journey, or a 7-day challenge for someone who's on their phone for 8 hours a day. We could talk about, I'm talking a lot. We could talk about the thing we curated in the bathroom, going back to the event.
Actually, there are some details that I think that are, I'm realizing that I've said this so many times, that the parallels of like love, friendship, and business are so strong. And I think that this is one of them, which is the small things become big things over time to your detriment, or, you know, for the good.
Can you elaborate?
Like in love, for example, there's something called, is it called emotional bidding, or like bidding to your partner. So for example, I might say, oh my gosh, look at those birds that landed on the balcony. And even though I just made that up, you looked, because I'm like, oh, look at this cool thing. If you were to ignore me because you don't care about the birds, it doesn't really matter if you care about the birds or not. It's you acknowledging that I care. And so even though it's a small thing, you looked. And if you didn't, and this were like not, a made up situation, but actually happened, that's a small thing, which is you not reciprocating my bid. Okay. And those small things, to our detriment, are what drive a wedge in a relationship. So like in business also, right? Like I think that there were so many small details that really you came up with, that we put into action, that perhaps on their own were inconsequential or may not sound like a big idea, but because there were a handful of these small details, small moments, and small pieces of demonstrated thoughtfulness, that made the experience the next level, the higher tier. And so I don't want to share like too much about the event, because I do love this kind of air of curiosity. Fair enough.
You said people, I'm calling you out right here, not calling you out, challenging you in your honesty. Did people cry? Who cried? Oh, you don't have to say it. People cried?
Yes, there was sort of like a quiet moment to sort of think through some reflection. And there were quiet tears being shed, like hands reaching faces, wiping away.
Yeah.
And I think that, I generally like tend to shy away from things that are sad. But I think that there's also beauty in sitting with your feelings and kind of like riding the wave of emotion. And I think that's the healthy way to experience emotion, right? Which is a skill that I'm continually learning, maybe that we all are, of like, how do you experience your emotions fully and not let them like consume you day after day, week after week, year after year.
Sure.
And that was really beautiful to sort of see that people were really, okay, we have this collective consciousness, right? There's like 100 people in a room together. We've agreed to be off our phones and to be present. And then to see it at the individual level, that you have committed to being present and vulnerable with yourself in this one moment, that then translated to being present and vulnerable with the people at your table, or the people in the room, and maybe the people beyond the room when you left. And that, to me, that kind of like ripple effect is what makes me so excited that this is a series, and what makes me feel like the thing that we're doing is so much bigger than us, which has always been the intention. But when we think about the podcast, like generally it's Sam and Elliot are the hosts. Sam and Elliot are interviewing someone. Sam and Elliot are posting on Instagram. You follow Sam and Elliot. When you DM us, it's Sam and Elliot. Like, that's all great because it is us. And it's more difficult on social media for us to experience the ripple effects. You know what I mean? That was probably the most impactful. Well, yeah. One of the most impactful moments.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of my most impactful moments, now that you're mentioning that, even though I didn't see tears, that people that I don't normally see, or I guess people that I wouldn't normally expect to partake in something like that, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but as far as for men, truly, like, being alone with your thoughts, intentionally is not something that it seems like most of us tend to do or like to do. But that we curated something like that, and that there were plenty of men doing that, was like people I know, especially people I don't, but people I know, was like kind of otherworldly, very surreal in the moment. That was incredible. There's so many things I could say about that, but that moment right there was definitely will stick in my mind forever.
Yeah. Do you think it's again this idea of positive social pressure, which 100%. Is like, because we've all committed to the same thing, we are collectively creating a space which is safe to, even if the vulnerability is internal only. Yeah. We are as a community creating a space that you can go there. I would be curious, maybe like in a few months, I would be curious to know if people went back to go through their thoughts to remember that moment, or if they told a friend about it to encourage them, or if they, picked up meditating, or if they picked up a new habit that sort of filled their cup in a way that they hadn't done before.
I wonder if there's anything wrong with dreaming in public, aka on the podcast, for everyone to see, because it's like you hear about like, work in silence and dream in silence, and if you speak too much, then that shows signs of weakness, especially for men, which is fine, whatever. And I'm just like thinking about like dreaming big, like that's sort of the thing that I'm really interested in, is the continuation of a thing, like the story that is the podcast episodes, or the story that is the Return to Real Life series. Like how exactly, like it's almost not enough for me. Like it's cool that it happened, but I wish that we could grab those 100 people and bring them back and build off of it. And I just love the question you asked, because that's what I'm thinking of. I'm like, how do we, and we're on our way, we'll get there, but it's like, how do we cultivate that community so that we can see each other's progress? That's what I want. Like the positive social pressure of change. Yeah. Like being open enough and vulnerable enough with these 50 or 75 or 100 people that you can share, where you're at and where you want to go and what ails you the most and what's preventing you from getting there, and how can I rely on these people to get me there. But also the opposite always. I always feel like I have to mention the opposite also, like what can you offer them? And there's always so much that you can offer somebody else always, And I'm like, how do we build that? And that's something that I'm really interested in doing. And I think the event will eventually spawn something,
Yeah, I think that I share the sentiment of like, how do we keep up with these 100 people? Like, we always say, like, please reach out to us on Instagram, like, shoot us a DM, we'll definitely respond. Like, let us know how you're doing. A couple of the emails that I sent out were like, please don't be a stranger. Like, slide into our DMs, shoot me an email, like, let me know how things are. How do we stay in touch with these people? How might we create an infrastructure of, like, accountability and sharing and this idea of kind of a two-way street of communication. We do want people to like slide in our DMs, send us an email, let us know how things are. But I think there's more, to be done. I don't know if as a consumer, I would just like send somebody a random email expecting them to care, right? Even though we do. Yeah, it's an interesting thing for us to continue to mull over. I wanted to go back to something you said earlier and touch on kind of more in depth the concept of, you said the more you're on your phone, the more you sort of struggle with your self-image, the less you get to like bask in the idea of self-love and like acceptance and grace and all of the things we need to give ourselves, but can sometimes struggle doing. And that inevitably bleeds over into your other relationships, like our marriage, your friendships. If you all haven't heard of the book already, there's a new book out called The Anxious Generation, and it's by Jonathan Haidt. I think he's a professor at NYU.
This is correct.
Yeah, he's just kind of blowing up talking about how growing up with social media is affecting our children. And he's really going back to sort of, I would say my generation. I think I read something that he said we call like being born in 1997 or 8 Gen Z, but that we've seen these effects as early as people in college in the 2010s. So there's just an incredible amount of data out there around when iPhones were introduced, when the front-facing camera was introduced, when social media was introduced. We see trends of anxiety, depression, suicide rates going up at an incredible rate among like young generations specifically. And I think that it's something really interesting and honestly kind of scary to think about, that especially when we're young and our brains are still forming. Like my frontal lobe has just fully set in very recently. Like,
right.
how malleable are we? And even now, like, you're in your 30s and you're experiencing this. Like, you're a little bit older than I am. You're not Gen Z, but you are experiencing kind of these same phenomena around the negative side of like staring at yourself all the time, or seeing yourself even in podcast snippets that we post, or playing this comparison game, or falling into FOMO all the time. Like, are you present if you're always thinking about the other things that you're missing out on? And I don't know. I don't know how deep we want to go with that, but I just wanted to point out that I think that what you're describing is not a unique experience, but it's actually like a nationwide, like,
well, worldwide, I would say.
Yeah, I don't know if these
stats are for
I think it is US, Canada, UK, Australia. I had some couple of notes, but yeah, I mean, what does that make you think? I know we're saying like phones aren't bad, but like certainly there's a dark side.
Yeah, it's a tool, and I think you can abuse anything, right? Yeah, I'm trying to think of when at first. I mean, I should do some research instead of having to correct myself later on, but I'm just going to guess. I think the first iPhone came out in like 2008 or 2009 or 2010. And that's what he's talking about. Like in 2010, I think between 2010 and 2012, the numbers like depression, anxiety, suicide rates for teenagers shot up like exponentially. And that is sort of when, that's obviously coincides with the first iPhone or the Razor. I think it's the iPhone because it's talking about having the internet access to your phone. And then I think about where I was at that time and when I acquired an iPhone and how differently I view certain years of my life. It's weird because like when you dream, you don't really dream. Like people have talked about this a lot. Like when you dream, you never really see a phone, or in movies, you don't really see a phone. I don't know if there's a specific reason for that, but I think about that in my dreams, especially recently. I've had some super vivid dreams. Never do I have my phone. And when I'm thinking about my life before my phone, I never have a phone. And even when I'm thinking about my life, in the last 10, 15 years, I'm not ever thinking about me being on my phone. But the way that I view my life before I had a phone is completely different than the way I view my life after I had a phone. Like it switches from like this, like just me seeing myself as a regular person experiencing life, right? Like I'm a fly on the wall to the very critical, like, here's what you didn't do, or here's what you did do, or here's how you felt about yourself, which is almost all negative. And I'm not saying the phone is, 100% responsible for that, but I think it has a role to play. And then, we're thinking about, our friends who have kids and how, they're growing up on their phone. Like my, nephews and niece Israel growing up, with internet access as a 12, 13, 14-year-old, like, it's just fascinating. And it's like just so strange to think that they'll never experience what I experienced.
Sure,
or
like
even maybe
walking to your neighbor's house, knocking on their door, like, can Elliot come out and play, like, right now?
Yeah, like, how could we? It's not this like this yearning for the past, even though that's true. I like doing that, but like, how can we recreate those moments? And you could do that through film. And I always think about that. How can we create these beautiful moments? Not to say that phones are bad, not to shun phones, but to just show that there's something else. What is the other? What is the other? And it's possible to experience, but it would have to be curated. And I'm like, why not curate something like that? Some sort of like, almost like me. When I think of it, I think of like a scavenger hunt, but it's like exists in this separate world, and you're sort of just experiencing it, as it's curated to be experienced, but takes place in, 97. I think that'd be so cool. And I think it'd be such a refreshing thing. And that's why I think there's so much, that's why I think the event did so well. That's why I think that we got the press that we did. That's why I think that we, got the traction that we did and sold the event out, was because like that's something that people care about. Like the phone free, the idea of phones, right? Everything that surrounds it, people clearly care about, And so like, how can we continue to curate and create really unique experiences for people? Just to show that there are other things that you can be doing with your time.
Yeah, I think the unspoken theme of this episode for me is boundaries. And we talk a lot about balance, and I think that that's sort of the skeleton key of balance is boundaries, which requires these elements that we talk about frequently, like intention, like authenticity, asking yourselves these questions around like, what do you want out of your life? And so when I think about my phone, or I think about my work, or I think about my relationships, like, how am I being more intentional about putting boundaries in place so that I can be more fully present, so that I can be more, wholly invested? And yeah, I agree. I think that that's what makes this event series so amazing, is we're creating a space where we're saying, here's our collective boundary. We're going to be present. We're not going to be on our phones. And that feels really special. And I'm really proud of us.
Go team. Denver. People listening in Denver. Tell us about your favorite event space or venue that you think we could host a phone-free experience in Denver that we're planning for late July. We'd really like to hear from you. We're really trying to intentionally cultivate a new community in Denver since we're new here, and we're really excited about it. And we want to find a really cool place that, shares the same values that we do, which I feel like won't be very difficult to do in Denver. But if you live in Denver, or if you live in the area, please tell us. We'd love to hear from you.
Or if you run such an event space and you yourself would like to be our partner, please reach out.
Please do. Yeah. I think we'll find a really cool space, but I think it's worth mentioning
I'm
that
excited.
We don't have a space yet, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Even if you're not from Denver, even if you live in Albuquerque or New York or wherever, but somewhere in Denver, that'd be great, Sam and I want to thank you so much for listening to Something More Human. If you're enjoying the podcast and want to support us, there are plenty of no-cost, minimal effort ways you can do so.
For starters, you can subscribe to the show on your favorite listening platform. You can leave us a 5-star review, drop us a comment with a topic you'd like to hear us discuss in an upcoming episode, and you can also keep up with us on Instagram and TikTok. Give us a follow there at Something More Human. Thanks so much.
Thank you.